Greetings, everyone, and thanks for tuning in for this paranormal pit stop. Tonight, we'll be exploring a prominent plantation home tucked away on the northern banks of the James River, off of State Route 5 between Williamsburg and Richmond in Virginia, that's recognized as the oldest active plantation in the whole of the state, and also as the oldest family-operated business in North America. Rumored to be stalked by a range of restless souls tied to its past, are you prepared to brave the hauntings of the historic Shirley? Historically, lands the Shirley now rests upon were first settled under Sir Thomas West, 3rd Baron de la Warr in 1613, after which his estate was called West and Shirley Hundred. The estate would survive the Native American uprising of March 22nd in 1622, and would be recognized as the westernmost settlement on the north end of the James. And in 1638, one Edward Hill would acquire a portion of plantation lands, after which his original 450-acre plot would be further expanded upon through tedious land acquisition and by marriage. In 1660, Hill would place a patent on 2,476 acres, which included a 416-acre island. Following his death shortly after, his lands would be passed on to his son, Edward Hill II, and while it's unknown whether it was Edward I or II, one of the Eds would construct the first mansion on Shirley Plantation grounds, which was called Hill House. Through the mid-17th century, arrival of the indentured English servants previously utilized in most work tasks would slow, and sadly, like many other plantations of its era, cash crops at the West and Shirley would be grown on the backs of the formerly enslaved. In 1700, Edward Hill III would take over plantation operations. However, his only son, the subsequent Edward Hill IV, would die of consumption at just 16, leaving no male heir to the estate, and resulting in its bequeathal in 1723 to daughter Elizabeth and her husband John Carter, just preceding Ed III's passing in 1726. The mansion, or Great House, was officially completed on site in 1738, just adjacent to the earlier Hill House, and sadly, by 1787, it's charted that Charles Hill Carter would hold around 67 formerly enslaved individuals above the age of 16, and around another 67 who were younger, that were documented alongside around 70 heads of cattle and 16 horses. Through the early 19th century, that number had grown to somewhere from 70 to 90. However, following the abolition of slavery in 1865, those formerly enslaved on Shirley grounds would actually be welcome to stay on as wage laborers, which many did, and in 1868, owners would issue the demolition of Hill House and the utilization of its salvageable pieces to construct the mansion at Upper Shirley. In 1969, the remaining old Great House was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. A year later, in 1970, it was recognized as a National Historic Landmark, and from 1979 to 1980, archaeologists from the College of William and Mary would excavate the original Hill House site, the 1843 slave quarters, and nearby indigenous settlements that actually predated European arrival. In the present, the upper floors of the old Great House are still occupied by the Hill Carter family, while its bottom floors are open to the public for tours, and the whole of the site features a sprawling grounds laden with outbuildings such as a smokehouse, stables, an ice house, storehouse, dovecote, and a 2-story kitchen with living quarters for the formerly enslaved. Classically, the whole of the historic Shirley expanse is rumored to be haunted by both the souls of various family members and those tied to its bounds, and by the restless spirits of the plantation's formerly enslaved, and both staff and visitors to the site have reported disembodied footsteps heard from vacant spaces, objects spied moving on their own, and the disembodied sounds of a woman's voice heard singing or calling out names. Several informal investigations of the expanse have yielded high EMF levels, orbs captured in photography, and inexplicable temperature changes, while other accounts tell of doors that open and close spontaneously, of lights that flick off suddenly, plunging all near into total darkness, and of the constant feelings of being watched or followed by someone or something unseen. The most popular legend surrounding Shirley involves Elizabeth's sister, Martha Hill, or more affectionately, Aunt Pratt, who left for studies abroad in England, planning to return, only to fall in love overseas, marry, and never see her homeland again. Before Aunt Pratt departed, she left a signed portrait of herself in her old second-story bedroom, and for years it would remain on the wall, until in 1858 it was moved to the attic for safe storage. Chillingly, shortly after its transfer, those nearing the access area began reporting a frantic knocking heard from the ascent that seemingly increased in intensity each day until that section of the structure was positively shaking. Finally, Aunt Pratt's portrait was returned to its original wall, and the knocking ceased. Subsequently, in 1974, the aged painting was shipped to New York City for a Haunted and Cursed Items exhibition at the Rockefeller Center, where, during its stay, it began to rock violently within its display, a phenomenon captured on camera from multiple angles, and that grew with such intensity that it resulted in the painting having to be removed from its holdings and placed back into its locked box for safety. Even more disturbing, workers at the storage facility holding the piece following would officially document hearing banging and screaming noises emanating from its area, and would discover the painting had somehow escaped from its safe box and was seemingly making its way across the floor towards the exit. Once again, when the painting was returned to its rightful space at Shirley, odd happenings ceased. Over the years, as Aunt Pratt fell into a state of dormancy, her presence was all but forgotten, until more recently when one tourist from a group decided to chime in following a presentation, declaring that the story was the biggest hunk of baloney he'd ever heard in his life. No sooner had these words escaped his mouth when the doors to the armoire held below the portrait swung open hard, smashing him in the back, and resulting in the entire group running from the room, screaming in terror. Lastly, a silhouette bearing a stern likeness to the hard-headed Aunt Pratt herself has been sighted roaming silently about historic Shirley grounds, often gazing from upper windows or observing the living from a distance. Thanks for tuning in for this Paranormal Pit Stop. If you enjoyed our histories and ghost stories, subscribe to our channel, like this upload, and share us with anyone you feel could use a good scare. We'll see you next time.